Hey guys, so something you may not know about me is my heart is near and dear to those of our paraprofessionals and teachers that are training our paraprofessionals. And why? I started my career as a paraprofessional. I spent 3 years as an RSP para in a high school and middle school for a time while I was getting my teaching credential. And it was an amazing job. And I had a fantastic teacher who took me under her wing, knew I wanted to be a teacher, and was phenomenal. I was one of the fortunate ones. I had a great mentor to lead me on the way to becoming a teacher. And I know the reality, and that is that not everybody is that lucky. And so what I've done is I put together a series of videos that are specifically designed for those of you that are paras and working with students in the reading realm. You might be an RSP para working with students on helping with their goals related to reading. You might be an intervention para, but somehow you are focused on reading instruction. And so I want to help guide you on the way. And I've got a plan, and I'm hoping you're going to stick with me. Now, if you're one of those amazing teachers like I had, who is here because you are looking for solutions to help your para, then you are in the right place, because we are kindred spirits. We know the pure golden value of our paras, and we want to keep them happy, keep them strong, keep them well trained and knowledgeable so that they can do the best job they can for us and for our students. Stick with me. So what you're going to find here in this series is a group of videos that are going to cover what is important for reading intervention. What do we really have to get into? And we're going to explore this from the perspective of the paraeducator. Paras come to us with a unique set of experiences, and they don't have the background education knowledge in most cases, or the teaching experience to take on this task as a teacher would necessarily, but they're so valuable in this process. So let me introduce myself. My name is Emily Muchanti, and I want to thank you for taking your time to spend with me. I am a reading specialist and interventionist and a bit of a reading diva. I've actually spent the last 15 years working with and training teams of paraeducators who work in my reading lab with small groups of students. And through the course of the day, our team would actually end up seeing over 100 students every day. And it's because we had a well-oiled machine. And this started with really well-trained, confident paras. So here are a couple of things that I've learned from my time. Number one, paras feel undervalued. Now, I know that's not true. We do value them as teachers, but they feel undervalued, and I can't blame them. In so many situations, schools don't put the training into them so that they are able to develop more tools in their toolkit or gain more confidence. I can also attest that they are undertrained. Any school I've ever gone to that has had the luxury of working with paras has actually had no plan in place for training the paras to do some of the heavy lifting in the area of reading in particular. And I do know that paras hold the key for us developing award-winning reading intervention programs. So here's the situation. We do what we know until we know better. It's human nature. And so in order to make a shift and a change where we can take our paraeducators and really build them up and approach this reading intervention with something that they're passionate about, is we first have to start by building knowledge. A para needs knowledge. In my experience, all of my wonderful paras have been like sponges. Everything that I ever train my teachers with, I always run it past my paras first. I train them first. They love it. They feel valued. They feel like they are important to the team and to the process, as they are. And I know that this knowledge is going to build confidence and it's going to empower our paras. And if we have a confident and empowered para, that person can truly change the trajectory of a student's educational careers. So it starts with knowledge. But then what we have to do after we get some knowledge under our belts is we need to move towards skills. Paras need to learn how to deliver instruction that is explicit and direct. And that means that they have to be able to address skill deficits in a very timely, concise manner. They have to be able to look at data and interpret that data as well. This is how we can hone in on what kids really need. It's really about the instruction. And then finally, the last thing is we have to give our paras strategies. What kinds of instructional strategies can we put in their toolkit so that when they come to a situation where a student is doing something they may not have seen very typically, they can pull out their tools from their toolkit and apply it so that they are becoming more responsive to that student's needs. So, what's to come? Well, with knowledge comes power. And I can tell you this is only the beginning. What I have planned is a 5-part series beginning with the first video today. Because here's the reality. If you don't know what's important, then everything is. And if everything's important, you're going to try to focus on everything, and you're really never going to get the time to dive into what's truly important. So I'm going to save you the guesswork here. I'm going to tell you what's important. What do you as a parent need to know? Or what do you as a teacher need to train your paras in? And this is the 5 basic pillars of reading that we really need to hone in on in reading intervention. That is phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, academic vocabulary, and comprehension. And each of these are going to be their own video in the next few weeks. So make sure to subscribe to this channel so you can see all of those coming out. So we're going to start with the first video right now, and that is phonemic awareness. And phonemic awareness is something that is sometimes overlooked in the intervention world. Now, the push, more of a push is what you're going to hear from something called the science of reading. And it's a wonderful movement that is really trying to get back to some of those basics on what is so important for kids to learn to read. And the first one is phonemic awareness. And that is manipulating sounds and words at the phoneme level. So a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. And it is a necessary early literacy skill. This is something that young children start to do very early. They play with language. They start to say isolated sounds. We play games in the car as we're driving with our toddlers. I see a bus, bus. What do you hear? We're isolating sounds. So this, with phonemic awareness as a skill, it's the understanding that spoken words are made up of individual sounds. And you might be asking, well, what does that have to do with reading? And the important part is that phonemic awareness, when a student has the ability to recognize these sounds in spoken language, it makes transitioning into letters and words and putting those together so much smoother. And so we want to build that skill with the absence of letters, which is phonemic awareness, so that by time we get to phonics, which is where we bring in letters, that transition is so much smoother. Phonemic awareness is something we can do with our eyes closed. We can literally be in a room, ask the students to close their eyes, and so they're not looking at any letters. They're just focusing on the sounds, that auditory input of oral language. Now, there is an overall umbrella of phonological awareness, which is more of a broad auditory skills that students will learn. And it starts very basic, where kids are able to recognize that words are broken into syllables. They can count words in sentences. They might be able to identify the first sound in a word followed by the rest of the word, which is the onset and the rhyme. This is where we teach them to rhyme and to recognize rhyming. But if you look under this umbrella, you can see these other little raindrops underneath. And these are the more specific phonemic awareness skills. And this is where we're adding and deleting sounds in words. We're isolating sounds. We're blending sounds. We're pulling sounds apart. If I were to ask a student, and I said, what are all the sounds that you hear in the word cat? A student who has mastery of phonemic awareness would be able to say, k, at. Or if I said, if I gave you the sounds d, g, what word would that be? And students can then blend those sounds together, again, without looking at any words, then they are gaining skills and mastery over that skill of phonemic awareness. Interestingly, about phonemic awareness is, I mentioned earlier that it is an early literacy skill. It is also one of the most early indicators of possible reading deficits or even dyslexia. So we can screen students in kindergarten, and if we see gaps in this particular skill area, then we know we've got a red flag right away. And we need to bring these students in for intervention so that we can build this very, very important early foundational skill and hopefully get around and work around and build that skill that we know is going to be so important as they are learning to read, so that no deficit occurs later. Now, how does all of this fit into reading development? And I'm going to keep coming back to this one image. This is Scarborough's rope, and you would see it if you were in a teacher education program at any time, you have your credential, or you've just done some research on your own. This is kind of the go-to visual for how reading develops. And you can see these kind of frayed strands at the end of the rope. And we've got two different skills that are coming together. We have skills, early skills, where students are developing language comprehension, their background knowledge, their vocabulary. They're learning about language and grammatical structures. They're able to reason. They're able to have concepts of print and follow a story through pictures and things like this. They're able to follow a conversation. We can take this skill of language comprehension, which is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle when students are learning to comprehend text. They first have to be able to comprehend language. After we can comprehend language, we can also bring in the skill of word recognition. And this is where phonological awareness and phonemic awareness in particular aid in this development. So you can see under this rope that we've got phonological awareness and decoding and spelling and sight word recognition. These are all things that bring together that other part of that frayed part of the rope that are then going to be woven together and come out on the other end as skilled reading and comprehension, which is the reason we read. It's all to comprehend. All of these skills are woven together. They take years of practice, years of application and instruction for students to really become skilled readers, especially students that struggle. So let's talk about what are some students that you may have seen in your programs or at your school. Students with they're typically really good readers. They're going to start with strong PA skills, which are phonemic awareness skills. So you might see that they're able to develop these skills and even master them by first grade and for sure by second grade. The skills should be mastered. Now, they're also going to hone in on their skills through singing, rhyming. They just naturally will play with language. They will hear the sounds. They will also make the leap into reading words so much more smoothly with good instruction. And I say with good instruction because there's a tiny little fraction of your students in a school population that seem to just learn to read like by magic. That's not how it typically happens. But with good instruction, most of our students are going to become very adequate readers, especially with this skill. Now, let's contrast this to our students that all of us typically work with. And these are kids that are really struggling with learning to read, and they have weak phonemic awareness skills. So what are some things that you would see? Well, they're going to have a difficult time connecting letters and sounds when they're reading and spelling. One day they might know that A says ah, the next it's going to be the next it's going to be I don't know. Okay, so there's going to be a difficult connection there. They will need daily instruction focusing on phonemic awareness skills and the progression, because all skills start with kind of a simplicity in the beginning and then they build towards complexity. And so we want to use a curriculum that has a scope and sequence that is going to allow for those students to build on their strengths and then strengthen their weaknesses. And then finally, these students with weak skills are going to need daily, systematic, explicit instruction with repetition and to the point of mastery. And the kicker here is we want to do this as early as possible. And yes, it's true that some of our students in our RSP programs or our interventions, they might be third, fourth, fifth, even higher grade students still having to go back and work on these phonemic awareness skills because it can still affect all of these later skills that reading requires. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take stock of the resources that you have in your programs. When you're walking into a classroom, what are you seeing the teacher do? And it's important to do this because there are some really great things out there. We have some great tools available. And then there are some tools that we might have to supplement a lot because they're not so great. They're a little weak in this particular area. So we're going to look at what curriculum do you have? And do you know how to use this? Trainings are really important. This is going to be something I would love to offer my audience at a later time to actually do some trainings with some particular phonemic awareness curriculum that I am really particular and partial to. And then we also want to make sure that you are progress monitoring to see if what you're doing is working. Okay, so 3 things I want you to kind of think. What curriculum is being used at your school, in your programs? Do you know how to use it? And if you are using it, are you progress monitoring your students to go back and make sure that what you're doing is working? And that's really the important thing about intervention. We can deliver all the instruction in the world and pull some of the best curriculum ever. But if we're not progress monitoring our students to see how they're responding, we really don't know. And ideally, we want to be doing progress monitoring about every 2 to 3 weeks in an intervention situation, and probably even more frequently in an RSP situation. But this is a conversation you want to have with your whole team. This is not something to have in isolation. Talk to your teachers. Talk to the classroom teachers that you're working with. If you see phonemic awareness, ask them about it. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? Here are some really great things that you should use or that you could use. And these are just a few. And they are from left to right, my favorites in order. And what is important here is that there's a scope and sequence, as I mentioned before, that the skills they're begun with a certain level of simplicity, and they are built on as we go to add complexity and to ensure mastery. And I love Hegarty. Dr. Hegarty has a phonemic awareness program. It comes in 3 levels. There's a blue, a purple, and a yellow. There's a pre-K or TK version, a kindergarten version, and then a primary version. They are all amazing, and they even come in Spanish. If you are working with students, bilingual students, or in a dual immersion program, we still want to build phonemic awareness even if it is in another language. It's the auditory skill that we're working with. It's a fantastic program. David Kilpatrick has Reading Success, which is another great phonemic awareness curriculum that has a scope and sequence that a lot of programs will utilize. You may have used Elkonin boxes where students are manipulating tokens or coins or buttons or something so that they can move oh gosh, I'm losing the word. They can move a marker for each sound, and it gives a visual, but it's not using letters, because remember, when we add letters, it's phonics. And right now we're only working the ear muscles. That's what we call it. And then you may have seen some other things, especially if you're working in a kindergarten class or a primary classroom, where a picture is given and there's kind of that modified Elkonin box where students are still bringing down markers in order to identify those sounds. They just go with a certain picture. All of these are really great tools. The important part for intervention or for RSP is that we're doing these activities daily. If students aren't mastering this skill, it's that important in kindergarten and first grade that they are receiving this instruction daily. I can't repeat that enough, I guess, daily. So then we always want to progress monitor. Progress monitoring is one of the cornerstones of any quality intervention. And hopefully it's also a part of your RSP program. But in order to know if your instruction is working, then you have to monitor students' progress. And this is absolutely true for every single skill we're going to talk about in this series. Now, intervention students should be progress monitored approximately every 2 to 3 weeks. And I want you to think of it like this. If you progress monitor only once a month and you've got 4 months in a semester, you're only progress monitoring 4 times. And that's really not enough to catch an issue early so you can make an adjustment to instruction. Typically, what they say is the deeper the deficit of the student, the more frequently you should be progress monitoring. It may even be once a week, depending on the need of your student. It doesn't take long. It's a 1-minute little screen, but it needs to be done frequently so that you can track progress. And here's why. If the data doesn't show growth, or if the data does show growth, you want to keep doing what you're doing. It's working. You've got the proof. And plus your psychs in your programs and your school are going to love you because they love the data. But if the data shows little to no growth, then you have to reevaluate as a team what approach you're using and figure out what kinds of adjustments that you need to make. Now, all of this, I look at everything from a team approach. If you are a para, you are under the guidance of a teacher who is going to train you in progress monitoring. Or you can bring the subject up with your team, with your teacher, and come up with a way to progress monitor your students. But you want to be involved in the data collection and the data evaluation, because you are just like me, just like my paras and my teachers. you like to see them progress just as much as anyone else. So that's the end of our first short little video about phonemic awareness. Remember, again, this is one of the first 5 in the series where we are going to support paraeducators of reading so that our paras, whether they be intervention paras or paras in an RSP situation, are able to be more strategic and more responsive to the reading needs of their students. And really, you should probably subscribe right about now, because I don't want you to miss our next video, which is going to cover phonics. These are going to be quick little videos meant to give you some knowledge, meant to hopefully get you coming in and joining my Facebook group, which is Paraeducators of Reading. Join us there so that you can come in and have these conversations happen in real time. And I am working on a website and it is coming soon. It will be theparapros.com, because I am on a mission to help our paraeducators and our intervention teams be ready for when all of COVID is done and we are back open, because our kids are really going to need us. Thanks for joining me, friends. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe so that we can go on this journey together. Bye for now.